This is Don't Escape 3, a point-and-click adventure game. It has 2 speedrun categories, and I'm going to get the world record in both. This video is part of my Script Welder speedrunning challenge, to sweep the Speedrun.com leaderboards of every game in his 2 most popular series, Don't Escape and Deep Sleep. In the last video, I dominated Don't Escape 2, so now it's time for Don't Escape 3. Let's get into the runs. I started with the any percent category. If you're not familiar with speedrunning, any percent just means beating the game as fast as possible. The Don't Escape 3 leaderboard does add one small restriction though. The game's fastest ending, Spaced, is banned, so runners have to go for the second fastest ending, Escape Pod. You'll see why that is later. The current world record holder is Ascending Anthem, with a time of 42.967 seconds, and boy, is it a doozy. Let's take a look at it. As the game loads in, there is a small intro blurb that Anthem clicks through way too fast for us to read, but the gist of it is that his in-game character is a pilot on the starship VEFS Horizon. The character's memory is quite muddled, and he just woke up in the ship's airlock, with a timer counting down to ejection. The speedrun starts as soon as Anthem clicks through the last of the intro blurb, and he quickly aborts the ejection protocol and opens the airlock's interior door. He picks up a datapad on the ground, and while again he clicks through it too fast for us to read, pausing the speedrun reveals it mentions 3 critical pieces of information. Firstly, several of the ship's functions are offline, including life support, so there's only about an hour of air left in the ship. 2, a distress beacon was activated, and 3, there is a potential intruder on board. Anthem immediately heads towards the right, coming across a dead crewman outside the mess hall. He picks up the man's discarded plasma torch and continues right to the bridge, where he spots the ship's captain, also dead. The bridge also contains a fuse which he picks up. Since this is a speedrun, Anthem doesn't check the bridge's computer, but if he had, he'd have learned that the Horizon's most recent logs mentioned the ship had come across a strange blue crystal the crew brought on board for further testing. He heads left several times and inserts the fuse into the fuse box, restoring power to the mess hall. And that's his next destination, where he finds yet another dead crewmate splayed across a table. He grabs a knife from the body, then picks up fuel for the torch. Using the knife, he opens a vent to retrieve a key, which he then takes to the lab. There, the key unlocks a cabinet containing protective glasses. Exiting the lab, there's a sealed hatch on Anthem's left, but he dons the protective glasses and uses the plasma torch to cut open and use a manual release switch to open the hatch, allowing him to enter the engineering wing, which contains a cloud of toxic gas and yet another dead crewmate, bringing the tally up to 4. But Anthem doesn't care about figuring out what's going on in their ship, he just wants off of it. So he grabs the dead engineer's access card, heads right to the escape pod, opens it with the aforementioned access card, and launches it. The speedrun ends upon Anthem's final input to click the Yes option for launching the pod, leaving him with a final time of 42.967. The ending text blurb reveals that Anthem's pod was eventually picked up by the VEFS Warsaw, a starship responding to the Horizon's distress beacon, but all contact was lost with the Warsaw a few hours afterwards. Maybe Anthem should have done a little more investigating. Anyways, Anthem's route is incredibly solid, with almost no mistakes. After poring over his run for half an hour, I could only find one optimization, which is rather than grabbing the plasma torch on the way to the bridge, it is slightly faster to grab the plasma torch after inserting the fuse into the fuse box. But this is pretty nitpicky, as it only saves less than 100 milliseconds. So if Anthem's route couldn't really be improved, the only option was to beat him on execution, which was no easy task. Point-and-click speedruns don't really have tricks or techniques to learn like in speedruns of other games. It all comes down to click speed and accuracy. And the only way to get that consistency is through repetition, running the game over and over and over again until muscle memory develops. There really is no shortcut. Getting the record just takes time. Luckily, I had a trick up my sleeve to hopefully make breaking Anthem's record just a little bit easier. An overlay. Basically, an overlay is a transparent image I put on top of my screen that shows every important click location. Things like doors, items, inventory spots, everything. With it, I could see where I needed to click in advance, improving both my click accuracy and my click consistency. It was even semi-color coded, with red and blue for items, white and gray for menuing, pink for interactable elements, green for doors, yellow for screen borders, and green and turquoise for inventory slots. Making the overlay took just under 20 minutes, and here's the final result. Is it pretty? No, but it does work, and really, that's the important thing. With my route and my overlay, I began to grind out attempts, slowly lowering my times. And then, at around the 75-minute mark, I had this run. A new record of 42.808, edging out Anthem by less than 200 milliseconds. All in all, the plasma torch section was by far the hardest part of the run, killing several runs on decent pace. You have to keep your mouse exactly on the dotted line or the cut doesn't properly register. Doing that fast and accurately is pretty tough, but after a while, I got the hang of it. And with that, we had one record down and one to go. The next category I ran was 100%. In Don't Escape 3, 100% completion means earning all 6 of the game's achievements. 5 of those achievements are tied to specific endings. Spaced requires ejecting yourself through the airlock at the very start of the game. Escape Pod, the ending used in any percent speedruns, requires you to launch the escape pod. Hull Breach requires blowing up the ship's lab with yourself inside of it. Decontamination is earned by destroying the entire ship while you're still on board, and Lost in Space builds on decontamination, requiring you to both destroy the ship and collect the crystal fragment from the debris field. The final achievement, The Truth, is the only one not tied to an ending. It requires solving the mystery behind the murders on the horizon by decoding the ship's security footage and learning the keypad code that unlocks the crew quarters. Since getting the Lost in Space ending also covers the requirements for decontaminations, both endings can be achieved in just one run. And the Truth achievement can be collected while getting the Hull Breach ending, meaning that only 4 runs are required to 100% the game. Luckily, Don't Escape 3 autosaves right before you trigger an ending, allowing you to reload from that point and go for a different ending. So the 100% speedrun doesn't require 4 separate runs of the game, but rather one really long run that triggers 4 different endings. This will make more sense once we look at the current world record run, which, to no one's surprise, is also held by Ascending Anthem, with a 409.033. Let's analyze it. The run starts just like any percent, with Anthem waking up in the ship's airlock. Except this time, he decides life isn't worth living, and he manually ejects himself, triggering the spaced ending in just over a second. This is why you can't use spaced in any percent, it's just too quick and easy to count as a real run. Anthem reloads into the airlock, except this time he's going for the escape pod ending, the one used in the any percent category. This run is very similar to his any percent route, but Anthem does several extra things to set himself up for future endings. For example, instead of going straight to the mess hall after inserting the fuse, he first enters the lab and picks up an empty flask and antibiotics. In the mess, he grabs the knife from the corpse, but also uses the flask to collect a sample of its blood. He also grabs alcohol from the food dispenser and then detergent from the bathroom. From the hydroponic garden, he grabs fuel for the torch, the workshop blueprints, and some leaves. He uses the knife to get the lab cabinet key from the vent, from which he takes glasses and also a bottle of acid. He then puts the human blood, leaves, and antibiotics into the centrifugal mixer to create a substance that dissolves blue crystals. Notice that there is another section of the lab to his left that he is unable to enter, as the door is blocked from the inside by a buildup of blue crystal. This is going to be important pretty soon. In the hallway, he torches open the hatch to the engineering wing and picks up the access card as usual, but this time he makes a detour to the airlock, where he uses the keycard to unlock the case housing the spacesuit, which he dons. He exits the ship after attaching himself to a tether and finds a shard of strange blue crystal in the debris field, completing one of the requirements for Lost in Space. He then re-enters the spaceship, heads to the escape pod, picks up the toolkit, and then launches the escape pod to trigger the escape pod ending. Anthem reloads inside of the escape pod and heads back to the engineering wing, where he uses the toolkit to fix the fans, which disperse the toxic gases. He enters the life support room, where he feeds the workshop blueprints to the fabricator and dumps the crystal dissolving solution into the sprinkler system. He turns auxiliary life support on, giving him an extra 3 hours of air, then turns on the sprinkler system in the lab, spraying the crystal dissolving solution into the lab. He then uses the fabricator to create a portable igniter and then to upgrade his datapad. In the engineering wing hallway, Anthem uses his upgraded datapad to decode the security footage showing how the engineer died, getting one of the passcode digits in the process. Anthem skips through it pretty quickly, but if you're interested, the footage shows someone wearing a spacesuit sabotaging the fan system, allowing the buildup of green toxic gas that killed the engineer. In the lab, Anthem adds acid, detergent, and alcohol into the mixer, creating a compound that amplifies the power of explosions. Because he activated the lab's sprinkler system earlier, he can now access the second section of the lab. Inside, he finds another dead body and a bomb stored in a cabinet. He adds both the portable igniter and the new chemical compound to the bomb. Anthem then decodes the lab's security footage, which reveals that the scientist was killed during a physical altercation with the same spacesuit-wearing intruder. He also receives another digit of the passcode. He plants the bomb on the crystal in the lab, then decodes the security footage outside of the mess hall, which shows that the same intruder also killed the welder, earning Anthem the third digit of the code. Decoding the final piece of footage from inside the mess hall reveals that this crewmate was yet another victim of the intruder. And with that, Anthem now has all 4 digits of the passcode. He enters the code into the crew quarters security keypad and opens the door, only to be greeted with the blood-stained spacesuit worn by the intruder. But wait, why is it here? Well, as it turns out, the suit actually has Anthem's name on it. A 20-second unskippable cutscene reveals the truth. The crystal is actually a sentient being that grew inside of Anthem while he slept. It took control of his body and used him as a vessel to murder the rest of the crew and shut down the Horizon's safety systems. The crystal then tried to dispose of Anthem by venting him into space via the airlock. Luckily, Anthem woke up just in time to save himself by re-enabling the ship's safety protocols, which is where the game began. When the cutscene ends, Anthem earns the Truth achievement, and he knows what needs to be done. He takes the captain's access key from a nearby locker and rushes to the bridge, using it to disable the Horizon's safety protocols. Then he heads back to the lab and detonates the bomb. The explosion completely destroys the lab, obliterating the crystal and killing Anthem along with it, triggering the hull breach ending. The ending blurb explains that while every trace of the crystal was wiped from the horizon, saving the crew of the VEFS Warsaw, both the Horizon's logs and security footage survived. That allowed the government to learn about the crystal and start experimenting on it in a secret facility. Clearly, if Anthem wanted to prevent anyone from learning about the crystal, merely blowing up himself and the lab wouldn't be enough. He needed to destroy the entire Horizon. So upon loading back into the lab, he rushes to the engineering wing, plants the bomb on the ship's engine, and blows the entire ship to Kingdom's Come. The ending blurb reveals that the VEFS Warsaw finds nothing but the scrap metal remains at the Horizon, never learning what truly happens. The run officially ends upon Anthem's last input to detonate the bomb, bringing his final time to the impressive 4:09.033, over 20 seconds faster than second place. So, how can we improve on this monster of a run? Well, 2 years after Anthem set this record, runner Grid Merax made 2 important discoveries. First, you don't actually need to upgrade your datapad using the Fabricator. The purpose of a level 2 pad is to cut the in-game time required to decode security footage from 30 minutes to 15 minutes, but it isn't actually necessary. You start with 1 hour of air, and turning on the auxiliary life support in the engineering wing adds an additional 3 hours. Mixing both chemical solutions takes a total of 30 minutes. Repairing the fans takes another 20 minutes, and decoding all 4 cameras takes 2 hours with a level 1 pad. That leaves you with an hour and 10 minutes of extra air, even without upgrading the pad. Secondly, you don't actually need to decode footage from all 4 cameras. Each time you decode a camera, you get 1 digit of the crew quarters keypad code, but the full 4-digit code is randomly generated when you first load the game, not digit by digit as you decode the footage. That means that it is technically possible to guess the entire code without decoding any footage. Of course, ScriptWelder anticipated this, so you don't get unlimited attempts. If you enter the wrong code twice, you lose 30 minutes of air and the code re-randomizes. So even with only 2 attempts per run, there's actually still potential. The probabilities break down like this. With 0 known digits, there are 10,000 possible codes, giving a 0.02% chance of success. So you can expect to guess the code roughly once every 5,000 runs. Knowing 1 digit reduces the pool to only 1,000 codes, or a 0.2% chance, or about once every 500 runs. With 2 digits, there are 100 possible codes, a 2% chance, or roughly every 50 runs, and with 3 known digits, there are only 10 possible codes, giving you a 20% chance of guessing correctly, which should happen roughly once every 5 runs. Each run takes about 2.5 minutes to get to the keypad, so a 0-digit route would require over 208 hours or 8.7 days of non-stop attempts to correctly guess the code once. A 1-digit route drops the time to get a single successful run to about 20.8 hours, knowing 2 digits to around 2 hours, and 3 digits to around 13 minutes. Considering all of this, Grid decided a 3-digit run was the most reasonable, and chose to skip decoding the lab's security footage, which saves the most time by avoiding unnecessary backtracking. Unfortunately, even with these 2 optimizations, Grid lacked Anthem's ridiculous technical prowess, and was unable to beat Anthem's time, with his best run coming out to 4 minutes, 33 seconds, and 600 milliseconds. But I'm the current world record holder for all 7 of Don't Escape 2's speedruns, so I've got a fair amount of experience with point-and-click games. With these optimizations in hand, I was pretty confident that I could surpass Anthem. Just like I did with any percent, I spent half an hour making an overlay, then began my runs. I split my record attempts into 2 phases, a 4-digit route and a 3-digit route. As I mentioned before, the 3-digit route only succeeds once out of every 5 times, meaning that if I'd committed to it from the start, 4 out of every 5 runs would end before I reached the final section of the speedrun, and I wouldn't be able to practice it. Instead, I began by learning the run using Anthem's 4-digit routes, which allowed me to repeatedly practice the entire speedrun. Once I was consistently getting times close to Anthem's on the 4-digit routes, I would switch to the 3-digit routes, where skipping the final digit would hopefully save enough time to beat Anthem. Over the next hour and a half, I continued to run the game, learning the route and lowering my 4-digit route time closer and closer to Anthem's record. Once I brought my PB down to a 412 with a 411 sum of best, I switched to a 3-digit routes. As I mentioned earlier, I could only expect a viable run about once every 13 minutes with this strategy, so I knew it could take a while to get a run where I both A, guessed the code correctly, and B, was actually on a good pace. After an additional hour and a half of attempts, I was on my best pace yet. And then this happened. I'd guessed the code correctly and was on amazing pace. All that remained was to just finish up the last minute and a half of the speedrun without making any major mistakes. So with my heart pounding, I sat through the long, unskippable cutscene and prepared to finish up the run. .357.400, a new 100% world record, beating Anthem by over 10 seconds. Now, I did lose some time on escape pod and decontamination, so my sum of best was quite a bit faster at a 352.7, but after nearly 3.5 hours straight of running DE3, I was ready to call it a day. And that's a wrap. Over 4.5 hours of running, 2 records broken, and another game closer to my goal of sweeping every title in the Don't Escape and Deep Sleep series. As usual, if you're watching this and think you can beat my times, please go for it. I know that both of my records have the potential to go a lot lower, and I'd actually love to see how far the limits of this game can be pushed. Thanks to Ascending Anthem for being such a cracked point-and-click runner, and to Grid for discovering the 3-digit routes. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like and subscribe. I'm currently working on sweeping the records for Don't Sleep 1, Don't Escape 1, and Raft Wars 1. If you want to see more of my content, click the video on screen to watch me sweep the leaderboards of Don't Escape 2. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next run.